Chief Division Counsel and DOJ have approved a no-knock breach. We want the subject to be on display, doing the walk of shame, full visual impact. Any questions?
Are we becoming a police state?
Government told American citizens they couldn't go to church on Sunday.
For the first time in my life, I'm saying to myself, am I going to get a knock at the door?
FBI warrant, come to the door now!
The Patriot Act and FISA were used against Donald Trump.
These individuals have commissioned the biggest propaganda play in U.S. history.
They don't go after the people that rigged the election. They go after the people that want to find out what the hell happened.
We don't need to have a crime. What we need is a person to look at. And then we go find out what crime you did.
FBI! Our focus is shifting. Our main priority as a bureau is going to be domestic terrorism.
Really paints anybody who's right of center.
If you're a pro-life, pro-family Catholic, they define you as radical.
These are anti-government,
we have freedom of religion and freedom of speech,
violent extremists, and they must be dealt with. We can do anything we want. All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. We've got a great show for you today, a great guest lined up for you today. You know this man. He actually needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway because we're going to be talking about his latest film that I've just watched. I haven't even seen all of it, to be frank with you, and it is so well done and put together. I'm hoping tons of you will go out to see it and invite your friends. It's called Police State. You can find it at policestatefilm.net, policestatefilm.net, policestatefilm.net. It'll be launching on October 23rd and 25th. Dinesh D'Souza, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show podcast.
Hey, thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Dinesh, listen, first, let me ask you this. Will you describe what a police state is for the listening audience?
Certainly. We've had police states around the world, and there are some of them now. Places like North Korea, China, Cuba, Venezuela, and of course the old Soviet Union. And if you look at these places, unfree societies, tyrannical societies, you see certain common elements. One of them is mass surveillance of the citizens. They keep an eye on you. Number two, systematic censorship. Number three, these police states tend to be one-party states, which means that doesn't mean they have no opposition. It doesn't even mean they have no elections. China has elections and Iran has elections, but it's always a controlled opposition. They structure the election so that there's no effective opposition. Police states also tend to criminalize dissent. They tend to target religion, religious believers, so they shut down religious freedom. They have political prisoners. And so that's just, those are some defining characteristics of police states. And it's with some alarm, and I say this as an immigrant to the United States, it's with some alarm that I realize that many, if not all of these elements are now to some degree or another present right here in the United States. And that means we are moving toward a police state. I'm not saying we're a full-fledged police state, but at this pace, we will get there pretty quickly.
You know, Dinesh, I'm thinking back to the COVID lockdowns, frankly, and how many people seem to bow down to those without question. I'm a believer. I know you are as well. But even in the Christian community, I got to be honest with you. I was so shocked. I was shocked and disappointed. I mean, to see people bow down in the way that they did, especially people of faith. And the reason why I say that, you talked about one of the elements of the police state being this systematic censorship. But one of the things that I saw was self-censorship and continue to see. So my concern is that many Americans, frankly, Dinesh, I'm not even sure that they can discern what a police state is.
Well, it's important to realize that our police state is camouflaged. And by that I mean it marches behind the banner of saving democracy, upholding the law, promoting truth and fighting misinformation. It even claims to be advancing freedom. So So what happens is in other police states, it's really blatant. Solzhenitsyn describes in the Gulag Archipelago, which I'm talking about on my podcast, they just come for you, they catch you on the train, they tie you up, they pull you off the train, they don't give you any explanation, they don't need to give you any explanation because the police state is fully established. They just do what they want. Our police state has to run a lot of pretense. And so as a result, a lot of Americans are taken in. They were particularly taken in by COVID because we're not used to distrusting the people in the white coats. And so when they tell you, it's a virus, nothing we can do about it, we've all got to really take these measures. Now, your suspicions may be raised, wait a minute, if the churches are closed, why are the bars open? So people were raising questions about the selective way in which certain liberties were shut down, but other things were not shut down. And I think that has created an increasing skepticism. But now I think we know that agencies that we previously trusted pretty unreflexively have become corrupted and are very susceptible to ideological manipulation.
And I think this is one of the reasons that I appreciate this film, because I do believe that many more people are waking up, Dinesh. And I know you were quite frankly a victim of the police state, and in my opinion, under former President Barack Obama. But I think a lot of people are starting to wake up, and I think that's why this film is so important for right now. And regardless of how people that are viewing this may feel or not feel about the former President Donald Trump, I think that the persecution of the former president has illuminated exactly what seems to be happening within the United States. They see this unfair treatment of this man. Frankly, Dinesh, I love President Trump. I love DeSantis too. I'm one of these guys where I'm like, listen, frankly, if it's Trump or DeSantis, I'm a happy camper. But at the same token, you can't help but to look at what they've done to the former president and realize, man, if they can do that to him, imagine what they can do to you, to a regular citizen. It is scary.
It is so over the top that you have to be, blind not to see what's going on. Because, look, it's one thing if they had said, all right, we're going to file a single charge against the former president. We realize it's unprecedented, but guess what? He hung on to these really important classified documents. He should have turned them in. He was very stubborn about holding on to them. But no, when you have 90 plus charges, it's very clear they're using the shotgun approach, which is let's get him on something. If we don't get him in DC, we'll get him in Georgia. If we can't get him in Georgia, we'll get him in New York. If we can't get him on the criminal side, we'll wreck his businesses. This is classic police state thuggery. And the fact that it's coming out of not one place, it's not just the Biden DOJ, but it's also the DA in New York and it's the DA in Georgia. So our police state is a somewhat stretched out operation. It's at the federal level. There's some of it at the state level. Some of the Soros prosecutors are involved. It's also in the private sector. When you look at censorship, academia is involved, the media is involved, the nonprofit organizations are involved. Carl, that the way this works is that some academic will make a list. We need to censor these, 10,000 people. You may be on the list and me. And then the academic delivers this to the Biden regime. Then they sort the list based on topic. So Carl Jackson is spreading lies about COVID. That goes to the CDC. Dinesh is spreading lies about the election. That goes to the CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency. And then what the government does is they don't want to be directly involved in censorship because the Supreme Court might bust them. So they go, okay, let's bring in a middleman. So they have these nonprofit groups, the Stanford Internet Observatory, the so-called Virality Project. Hey guys, you take our list, you deliver it to the digital platforms. That way, when they do the censorship, our grubby hands are not on the list directly. And then the media cheers the whole process. So look at this like octopus. It's stretching across the public and the private sector. This is why our police state is a real problem. It's not just a matter of winning the 2024 election, although that's critical, but it's also rooting out this tyrannical impulse in so many of our institutions.
Dinesh, I want to get your reaction to this because I said, imagine if this happened to Trump, it could happen to you. But frankly, it has happened to J6 protesters, quite frankly. A lot of them that have been thrown in prison for quite some time. I was on an X space with Enrique Tarrio and several hundred other people at the time while he was awaiting his transfer to a federal prison. But this guy wasn't even in Washington, D.C. at the time. And what I'm getting at here, Dinesh, is what's really daunting and also disconcerting to me is this cheering on of the police state by the Democrat Party, by the political left. It's like they don't even understand. They don't even see what's going on. And my concern is that we're so divided as a result of this kind of get Trump movement that Democrats don't see what's going on, and as a result, we stay divided. They actually gain more power, and the police state becomes even larger.
Well, that's it. We have one party that is building the police state, and that's the left. Now, some of them don't realize it, and they just intensely feel this antagonism to Trump, and so as a result, they're a little bit blinded. Others, though, know that they're doing it, but the reason that they are inspired to push forward is that they don't face the risk themselves. So they'll say to me things like, well, Dinesh, I'm not being censored, and the FBI is never going to come to my door. And I go, well, that's true, but at least that's true right now. When the police state is full-fledged, then no one is safe. But while you're building the police state, the party that is involved in that under construction is safe, temporarily safe. And so some of these people have learned to enjoy the benefits of tyranny. I mean, let's remember, going back to slavery and so on, there's a certain benefit to tyranny. It's really nice to get other people to work for you for free. And so the political equivalent of that now is that Democrats get to use the process of law to torment their political opposition, and some of them are really enjoying it.
Man, that's such a great point, Dinesh. One of the things that my wife and I were actually sitting and talking about just before I came into the studio here, we were watching your film. And guys, please check out the film, policestatefilm.net, policestatefilm.net. It has 2 dates, which you can order or see it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dinesh. October 23rd and October 25th. We want as many people as possible. Take a friend to see it. Even if they hate, even if they hate you, even if they hate Trump, if they hate Republicans, tell them you'll treat them to a meal afterwards and just have a discussion about this stuff, for God's sakes, that Lord willing, it'll open their eyes. This stuff started, Dinesh, with actually, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about where did this stuff get started? You mentioned Ruby Ridge, and also my wife and I, we were having a conversation because we felt like we looked at Alberto Gonzales. I think he was the AG under George W. Bush at the time. I don't know what his intentions were. At the time, Bob Mueller, I suspect Bob Mueller was corrupted for a long time. I could be wrong. I don't really know his intentions from the onset. But it feels so disgusting to sit there and watch these people that we used to root for, frankly, Dinesh, and just like, oh my God, these guys were they corrupt? Did they have good intentions in your opinion, and they just went astray? What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And let me just say a word about the movie, and then I'll pivot to the question.
Sure.
The movie, we've bought out hundreds of theaters on 2 days, October 23rd and 25th. But the tickets are only on the website, which is policestatefilm.net. You can't buy them in Fandango. You can't go to the theater. Hey, I want to buy my ticket here. You can't do that. So go to the website, policestatefilm.net. Now, if you can't make it to the theater because the theater's 30 miles away, or gee, I can't go those 2 days, no problem. On Friday, October 27th, we have a virtual premiere, which kind of watch from home. And we'll screen the film, and we also have a live Q&A with Dan Bongino and me to follow. So all that's for the price of a movie ticket. And again, the tickets for that also, policestatefilm.net. Now, coming to your question, the sad truth is that it was after 9/11 that, again, as a result of fear, think of it, COVID and now 9/11, the fear causes a lot of people, me included, to say, all right, we don't just want to go after these bad guys after they do their thing. We need to stop them from doing it before they do it. So we have to give this expanded, let's call it police power, surveillance power, to the police agencies of the government. But of course, our intention was that they would use that power against foreign terrorists, the kind of guys like the Hamas guys, for example, who did what they just did. But instead, I think starting under Obama, the Democrats realized we've got these powers. Now listen, what about if we were to deploy them against our political opposition? So this is a really good warning for us, because the police state has a bipartisan origin. A lot of Bush Republicans were like, yeah, we got to do this, a little bit less freedom maybe, but we're going to buy some more security, never dreaming that essentially under the Biden regime, they would turn around and say, hey, Dinesh, when we think of people like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, we think of you. Trump Republicans are now accused of being terrorists. I mean, and the disproportion of it. I mean, think about it. Has there anybody in the Trump movement who has done what Hamas did? Has anyone in the Trump movement done what Al-Qaeda did? No. Or ISIS beheaded anybody? No. So the preposterous, and the key to the police state is to observe the formulas of law. Even in my campaign finance case, a trivial violation, normally I'd get a fine and maybe 100 hours of community service, but they deploy the full force of the government against me. So a lot of times the injustice is not, they find something you did. They find some technical violation. Hey, Carl, you filed your taxes late and so on. Okay, but you don't expect to go to prison for 5 years for doing that. So what they do is they unleash the system against you, pressure you through legal bludgeoning to take a plea bargain. And when you take a plea bargain, they go, see, he admits he did it. He admits he's a convict. And the idea is to discredit you from that moment on. So that's how they work.
Yeah, I honestly, I think they mess with the wrong person when they mess with you, because you have been doing God's work. You were doing God's work before, but you're definitely doing it now, bringing attention to this threat that will take down if we don't get in front of this thing, that will take down the greatest country that God has ever given man. Just a few more questions for you, Dinesh. We've seen the Patriot Act. You touched on that. You know what concerns me? I'm like, I don't even hear Republicans, frankly, in office talking about, listen, this thing, the time has gone and went for the Patriot Act. It's like you said, it's like this bipartisan police state at this point. Does it shock you that we hear so little about abolishing the Patriot Act at this point when we all know better?
I mean, the Republicans are a little too timid and invertebrate here, and this is why this movie is intended to stiffen their spine. Because the problem with the Patriot Act is not even quite what we think. It's not the obvious problem that the surveillance power is too expansive and that too many people are on watch lists and so on. The real problem is that the government has gone from tracking down offenses that are committed or being plotted to literally manufacturing terrorism. And they're doing that not only with the Muslims, but they're also doing that now with the MAGA Republicans. We saw it in the Whitmer kidnapping case. You got, a bunch of losers who are just really mad about COVID, mad at Gretchen Whitmer. But what the FBI did is it cooked up a scheme. Hey, guys, what about if we kidnap her? What about if we grab her? And then these guys are like, yeah, great idea, but we don't know how to do that, man. They're like, okay, well, listen, how about if we set up meetings? We're going to train you in firearms. What about if we drive you to her vacation home so you can kind of do surveillance? And there are more FBI agents and informants involved than there are so-called criminals. So what I'm getting at is this is really bad stuff. And by the way, sadly, it started with the Muslims, because the FBI and the other police agencies, by the way, not just FBI, the DHS, the Homeland Security Department, is more than 10 times bigger than the FBI. All these people have massive budgets. So they were like, we had 9/11, we expected more terrorism, but we're not seeing a whole lot of it. Let's go create some. So then they say, all right, let's find these 3 angry Muslims at NYU. They're like, yeah, we're ISIS. We hate the United States. So the FBI guys then go and start slipping ideas in their minds. Why don't you join ISIS? No, man, I can't join ISIS. I don't have a passport. How about if we get you a passport? Oh, yeah, really? You can get me a passport? Do you have any weapons? No, man, I don't keep any weapons. Well, listen, how about if you got $1,000? Maybe we'll help you to buy a gun. So this is the FBI orchestrating the crime so they can bust them right before it happens. And then the FBI go, we're amazing. Look at this. We just this amazing plot, and the ordinary. So Alberto Gonzalez, wittingly or unwittingly, became a party to this corrupt scheme, which, by the way, fit with the ideological narrative of the Bush administration. So it could be that he was just ideologically motivated, but this is how the corruption has seeped its way into the police agencies of the government. It's a big problem now.
You know, and it's important to mention, I think, Dinesh, you have both Kyle Seraphin and Stephen Friend, both former FBI agents, FBI whistleblowers as well, consulting on this film. I've interviewed both of those guys and keep in contact with them. And some of the stuff that I learned from them, some of which you've mentioned, is absolutely insane. Stephen Friend, for one, was involved in that whole Gretchen Whitmer thing, where he literally went to the property to get these guys, so to speak. And you can go back and check out my podcast with him, and he talks about that story. But it's funny, because that was one of my questions to you, Dinesh. Does the FBI create terrorism in a sense, or terrorists? And they do. I mean, this is insane. I hate to think of these institutions in this way, but they need to be, in my opinion, Dinesh, they need to be abolished. I've heard even Dan Bongino, who helped produce the film here, talk about how I think it's I forget the Marshal Service that could absorb the good guys in the FBI. I think Kyle Seraphin has said as much as the same. What's your take on that? FBI and the DHS, quite frankly, I don't see the need for the DHS. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you have a different view on that.
Well, the point you're making, and I agree with this completely, is that these institutions have become, there's a lot of corruption that infuses them from top to bottom. Now, the reason it's from top to bottom is not because the ordinary agent is necessarily a bad guy. The way you corrupt an institution is you restructure all the priorities and incentives. And when you do that, you can turn a good person and make them do really bad things. You know, some time ago, I watched an interview with one of the hostage negotiators of the FBI. He's not a real negotiator. He's really a sniper. So that's a disguised term. He's a hostage negotiator. He's there to kill people, right? And he was being brought in at Waco with David Koresh. And the guy interviewing him was like, what did you know about David Koresh before you got there? And this guy goes, nothing. And they go, what do you know about Waco? He goes, nothing. They go, well, you're coming in with long rifles to kill these people, and you don't know anything about them? And this guy goes, listen, I am brought in when the negotiations fail. Basically, the US government tells me, there's a bad guy, your job is to kill him. And I come in and I do that. So this guy defines his job operationally. He's not a bad guy. He's got a family. I'm sure he lives in a nice house. His point is that there are other organs of government that decide guilt or innocence. Basically, I'm a sniper. That's what I do. It's kind of like a soldier in war. And so what you have is the FBI, because it's corrupted at the top, it operationalizes what it's doing. It tells an ordinary agent, hey, listen, there's this 70-year-old grandmother living in this apartment. You don't have to worry about what she did. That's not your job. Your job is to kick her door in, go inside, grab her by the hair if she resists, pull her to the ground, twist her arms behind her back, put the handcuffs on, pull her down the stairs if she won't come cooperatively, pull her into the street, be kind of nice if the neighbors come out and get a good look at her and gawk. So the humiliation, the degradation, and the ordinary guy goes, well, listen, that's basically what the FBI does. This is what we need to do to get a promotion. This is how I get a bonus. This is how I get my pension secured. This is how I'm seen as a good guy who's sort of in line with the priorities of the FBI. So this is how you motivate good people, basically good people, to do some terrible things.
All right, Dinesh, you mentioned in the film, and by the way, guys, just so you know, a lot of the victims of the FBI that we've seen lately, besides Trump supporters, J6 protesters, people of faith, Catholics. You have the story of Mark Houck in the film. Parents at school board meetings, for God's sake, these are the enemies of the deep state at this point. And I can't stand the way Biden constantly uses this term MAGA Republicans as a pejorative in order to divide Americans. I mean, I hope people really start paying attention to some of their tricks. But a couple of things that you mentioned in the film that I think are very, very important. Google the deep state and media working together. Dinesh, I believe the biggest concerns leading up to 2024, besides this police state, I think number one is election integrity. First and foremost, I think this is the number two number two issue that every American needs to be concerned about. But if you will talk about how Google, the deep state or the police state, and the media basically collude together in order to keep this thing going, I think the audience should hear that.
Yeah, with Google, they're manipulating the search results. And that's a tremendous power because Google is very close to being a monopoly. A couple of other minor search engines, but almost everybody uses Google. That's why I use the verb, let's Google it. Because Google has got that market. And that allows them to control the flow of information. And these people have become megalomaniacal psychos at Google. By that I mean, once they have that power, and this is really how power intoxicates people, they go, listen, our job is not just we're not just running a search engine. Our job is to program human beings. And we can program human beings. They say this in their documents. We can program human beings by controlling what they see. And it's almost like if you have a government-run grocery store and they go, well, listen, we can control the eating habits of all people by putting stuff on the shelf at eye level, and this is what they see, and this is what they feel they're going to have to eat. So this is what Google is doing. The other thing about the media that to me is fascinating, and I think one of the things about the film is that it shows you the machinations of the police state. In other words, it shows you how this stuff really works. And it doesn't necessarily work by open kind of collusion or conspiracy, because think about the journalists who suppressed the Hunter Biden story. Thousands of them. They work for hundreds of news organizations. And they don't get on a Zoom call every morning and go, hey, let's all suppress the Hunter Biden story. So how is it possible for thousands of people to achieve the same result without speaking to each other? Well, the answer is they're sort of like birds in a flying formation going to Florida, and you're like, these birds aren't talking, they don't have walkie-talkies, but they're still flying together and in the same direction and side by side. And it's because each bird is sort of taking signals, maybe from the bird on your right, and so similarly here, there is a common cause on the part of the media, and that is to advance the Democrats and the left and to go after. So this is really why we have all these double standards that we're always pointing out. From the point of view of the police state, it's not a double standard. The police state always protects the people who are building the police state, and it goes after the people who are a threat to the police state.
I'm glad you said that, because one of my last questions here, BLM and Antifa, you had, I forget the founder of Revolver News, I forget his name.
Darren Beattie.
Darren Beattie, thank you. We saw the rioting, the death, the violence. I mean, the burning down buildings, all this kind of nonsense, fighting against the FBI. We saw that complete anarchy. They're not touched. They're not touched. When it comes to Republicans, when it comes to Trump supporters, you better not get in the way of the police state. So I mean, just kind of, you guys put that together so well in the film, and I just wanted to segue off of that point, if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I think in all these things, what I try to do is to advance the debate by going beyond the current state of the argument. So the current state of the argument is to focus on the double standard. Hey, wait a minute. You're going after Trump, but you're not going after Biden. You're going after the January 6th protesters, but you're not going after Antifa and BLM. But the point that Darren Beattie brings out in the film is he goes, we have a very weird type of police state, because normally police states have zero crime, right? I mean, if you go to China, you go on the subway and you start punching some guy in the subway, a bunch of, cops will show up and you'll never be heard from again. So police states normally guarantee the citizens, listen, you don't have any freedom, but you do have law and order, because we are ready to kick the butts of anybody who tries this kind of rampant criminality. So police states generally give you low crime and clean subways, even though they take away all your other freedoms. Interestingly, our police state doesn't even give you that. Our police state doesn't give you, Darren Beattie says, even the benefits of tyranny, right? Our police state gives you, on the one hand, they're smashing your First Amendment rights, your Second Amendment rights, they're preventing freedom of assembly, they're not giving you equal justice under the law, and you've got rampant criminality, and the police state doesn't pay any attention to that. They're focused on political criminals. In other words, they'd rather get me than some guy who's doing drive-by shootings in Chicago. So why is that? How do you explain why a police state would do that? And the answer is that the police state, while it's being built, while it's under construction, it actually has constituencies. So illegals are a constituency efficiency of the police state. They're like,
Great
you know,
point.
come on in, because if we get 20, 30 million more of you, we're going to have a permanent majority in the United States, and that's how we get to build the police state. So the police state is cultivating its own constituencies. I mean, it's really a remarkable thing to see, and I think what people who leave this film will not only be intellectually enlightened, but emotionally riveted. And so it's fun to see it in the theater if you can. I make these films for the theater. They're very cinematic. And it's fun also to go with people. So if you go with your family or your friends or your church group or your conservative group or Republican group, it's a good way to see it. And that's why it's in the theater October 23rd and 25th. But on October 27th, as I mentioned, you can watch at home, our virtual premiere. And that will be terrific too. We're doing it out of this fabulous studio in Las Vegas, and we'll have, in fact, Forgiato Blow, who wrote the closing theme song called Police State Survivor. He's going to perform it live. Then we show the movie, then the live Q&A with Bongino. So it's going to be like a great night at home, and it's all for the price of a movie ticket.
Man, Dinesh, you're getting better and better at this stuff every time you make a production, and you're doing a great job. Let me just say this last thing. I wanted to touch on something you said about Google. When I first started becoming active in the political realm, one of the things that I did was I volunteered for Glenn Beck doing research as a virtual researcher for Glenn Beck. And I can tell you, researching then compared to now is night and day. It was when Glenn Beck was on this George Soros just binge, if you will. And I mean, you could Google stuff and you would get so much stuff that pops up. You try that today, you have to do literally 5 times, maybe 10 times in some occasions the work, have a specific name, a title, so on, etc., to get the same information. And Google is absolutely geared against conservatives. So I'm so glad you've done this film. I mean, all of this stuff he touches on, guys, if you want, even if you want your eyes to be open, stuff you did not expect, understand, grasp clearly when it comes to the police state, this film will help you do it. Make sure you get it, policestatefilm.net, 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 October 23rd and October 25th. And if you want to just chill at your house, October 27th, and you get a Q&A, right, with you and Dan Bongino, Dinesh?
Yeah, because it's fun afterward. The cool thing about the virtual premiere is it's sort of like a massive Zoom call. Everybody, we had 80,000 people watch in the virtual premiere for 2,000 Mules, my last film. So you're all in it, you're watching the film, and then you get to type in your question if you like, and then we answer live. So it's kind of a very interesting way of using new technology to be able to see this film. And this is the first time the film will be aired nationwide, because although we have a lot of theaters, we're not in every single nook and cranny in the country. So people could say, you know, the theater may be kind of far from me, I can't make it to the theater. Okay, no problem. Set aside next Friday, October 27th, watch at home. You'll be glad you did.
All right. Well, Dinesh, if you'll just stay up with us so we make sure we don't lose you. Guys, I want to please encourage you to go out and see the film by Dinesh D'Souza, also produced by Dan Bongino, policestatefilm.net. Make sure you check it out. Make sure you share it. We want this thing to, have a major audience because we want America restored. I mean, it is as simple as that. And a lot of people may not quite grasp what's going on, what they see, but in front of their eyes. Maybe they haven't put the puzzle together. This film will help them do just that. Guys, please also support this podcast everywhere you go to get your podcast. Please subscribe to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Subscribe to Dinesh D'Souza's podcast. Obviously, you're going to love listening to him. So please do that wherever you go to get your podcast. Also, this show is brought to you by MyPillow.com. You got a patriot in Mike Lindell. I mean, you're talking about an American patriot, American jobs, American manufacturing. Use the promo code Carl, and you have a plethora of deals available. some over 60% off in some cases. MyPillow.com, 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. Just use my name, Carl, at MyPillow.com, Radio Podcast Square, or give them a call, 800-858-0263. And Dinesh D'Souza, the same thing. Check out his podcast. Guys, until next time, do not grow weary doing good. God bless you. Go check out the film, policestatefilm.net. Thank you so much, Dinesh D'Souza. I appreciate you, man.